Can I mention some WCW guys? Just tell me the first
Sure,
thing
sure.
comes to your head. Awesome. Uh, Kevin Nash.
Kevin was, I think, an amazing, he had a great mind for the business. I think that's what Kevin had more than anything else, I think, was his ideas and what would work in a scenario. I think he had a really great mind for the business. And he's a big guy, right? So he was able to really he was good at the big man stuff, right? And but I think the thing that comes to mind about Kevin Nash is his mind for the business. Just really one of those guys that could really, come up with the best scenarios and the best storylines, and he was good. He was good with that.
Scott Hall.
Scott was in my hometown in Orlando. That's where Clark and I broke in. So I knew Scott from Orange Avenue Gym, and he broke into the business, way before, not way before, but before Clark and I ever thought about wrestling. So he was kind of a local hero for me at the time because there was another guy called Ed the Bull Gantner. I don't know if you remember who that was. He was wrestling in Orlando. He was a UCF football player, and I played football at UCF. So Ed Gantner and of course Scott were the two guys kind of that were kind of paved the way a little bit. And Scott, I wrestled him in Japan, and I knew Scott. And Scott, for the size he was an incredible athlete. Like he could do everything, right? He had good mobility, could play big enough to be the big guy, but also could do anything in the ring.
Right.
And another guy, along with Kevin Nash, that really had a great mind for the business. Knew it. I don't know who trained him, but he knew the business very, very well.
Hulk Hogan.
I didn't do much with Hogan. I don't know him hardly. A few times that we did the NWO stuff, it was more. So I really didn't know him. There's no way I could really comment on him that much.
Buff.
Marcus, I knew Marcus back in the day, and we did a lot of tours in Japan. I love Marcus. He was one of those down to earth guys that you couldn't help but like, couldn't help but kind of be taken by Marcus. Great athlete, great in the ring, good promos. Just an all around, good guy.
DDP.
DDP, he's responsible for getting me into some of this because he's the one who said, "Hey, you need to do this. Don't give up. Stay in it." I know he got into DDP yoga and was a motivational, kind of persona, and that's perfect for him because he really did, was good at motivating and was a big part of me down at the power plant, training initially and getting in there with him and pushing me. So always been kind of a mentor for me as well.
Goldberg.
Didn't know Bill, he was there, but I didn't interact with Bill at all. Great physique, obviously didn't have the training, of years of wrestling for the push that he really received. But but when are you really ready? You kind of got to sink or swim in wrestling. You get thrown out there and you either can produce or you can't. And he certainly held it up. I mean, he had the look. And yeah, he thankfully he didn't wrestle 20-minute matches with really technical guys, but that wasn't his stick. And that's a lot of pressure for a guy to come in and kind of do what he did. So I think he did an amazing job at being put in that position and being able to do and be as successful as he was. So hats off to him. And I know he was a ball player, so he's another one of those guys that's athletic, big, strong, can do it, and he's impressive.
Scott Steiner.
I love Scott too. Scott was, I wrestled Rick and Scott a lot. Both those guys. Scott, was around in WCW and I was there, and he had the actual pedigree, the background in amateur wrestling. Was an amateur champion, right? As was Rick at Michigan, and he was legitimate, and again, a guy that had incredible athletic ability. This guy's doing the Frankensteiner. He's like 260, and it's pretty amazing and incredible physique and great on the microphone. Another one of those guys that once he got a chance to do it, could really cut loose. Which I think when he found his Big Papa Pump persona, that was really his thing.
Jeff, do you remember the body slam he used to give? He'd pick you up and then he would literally do a backflip
Yeah,
and land on. He would
it's
like
like
kill
a
himself half the
suplex kind
time.
of thing. No,
It's insane.
and I trained with Scott. He was incredibly strong. Like a lot of, I mean, I remember like 405 on the incline. Like Scott was strong. And when you're like that and you're an athlete and you have that kind of power, you're gonna launch people.
All right. What about Eric Bischoff?
At one point, Eric, I mean, obviously, I was very upset with Eric when we lost our contract with WCW, and I didn't get a chance to really go in and speak to him. And Eric was, he was with the suits, and there was not a chance for you to really interact with Eric, right? And so I always felt a little bad, kind of like, hey, I wish Eric would have sat down with me. I wasn't trying to, strong arm them with this kind of contract stuff. I was glad to be there. We were willing to work hard for the company, but he didn't know that. He just thought,
Right.
here's these guys, they're arrogant, they think they're going to be superstars, and they're demanding, this kind of stuff in their contract. And it was, in a way, like a mistake on both of our parts. He didn't, probably think about it that much, and we just made a mistake. But later, when I did the NWO Sting, Eric, was a part of that, right? And he's the one who said, if you this gets out, I'm going to squash it. And he kind of, extended the olive branch with that particular, character. And after that, we were fine. And I always appreciated that he was able to be fine with that. And since then, I've seen him a few times. Once in Japan when he was going over this, wasn't all that long ago, maybe 2019 or 18, and it was great to see him. And I always liked Eric. He's always, just to seem to me to be like a really stand-up guy. And he did an incredible job with WCW as, running that and the races or the wars that they had, with the WWE. And the fact that he was able to come out on top, in my opinion, kudos to him.
Were you under contract till the end at WCW?
Yeah, well, no, so it's another good story. So right when the AOL Time Warner merger was about to happen, JJ Dillon called me. I was off a tour from Japan, and he says, so what happened was Japan was paying WCW for me. So they were covering my salary from WCW. And JJ Dillon called me and says, "Hey, we're not going to need you anymore." And I'm like, this is kind of a shock, right? But we knew the AOL stuff was going to happen. So I said, okay. And so I called Masa Saito, that night, I think, from Japan. I said, hey, Masa, I just want to let you know, I'm not in WCW anymore. And Masa, I never forget this to this day. He said, please, Jeff's son, don't go anywhere else. Don't go to the WWE. He said, don't go anywhere. You stay with me. We'll keep everything the same. I want you here working for me. And I didn't, over that verbal phone call, I knew that he was going to honor everything that he said. We didn't shake hands or anything. I just knew his word was good, right? That's the kind of guy Masa was, who was a huge mentor for me and Scott. And I just was like, oh, great. I said, I'm your boy, I'll be here. And I remember, I was married. We ended up breaking some champagne out and was like toasting. I got fired and hired within the same, hour long conversation. So, and he was true. We kept that same contract, same thing for the next 2 or 3 years. But I wasn't in WCW, but I was, working the same NWO character for at least another year or two, and then we did the Team 2000. Once the NWO kind of broke up, we had to switch tracks a little bit. But I stayed there for years.